The Mandalorians are widely considered to be the greatest soldiers in the history of the Star Wars universe, unparalleled when it came to waging war. They were widely feared by the rest of the galaxy for this, and for good reason. In conflict after conflict, they dominated battlefields across the galaxy, defeating Jedi and Sith alike and razing worlds that resisted their conquests. In an earlier video, we discussed how heavily the Mandalorians influenced the Grand Army of the Republic. And in this video, we'll be taking that a step further. Today, we'll be discussing what would have happened if the Mandalorians actually led the GAR.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Before we get into things, we should make clear what kind of Mandalorians we're dealing with. There have been many types of Mandalorian armies over the millennia, from the Mandalorian Crusaders and Neo Crusaders to the Mandalorian Super Commandos and the Death Watch. We'll be assuming that the GAR is being led by the true Mandalorians, the last band of genuine Mandalorian warriors before the events of the movies, who were led by Jaster Mereel and later Jango Fett. Mandalorian battlefield tactics were fairly simple but devastating. The Mandalorians liked to be prepared, and at the height of their power, their armor was lightsaber resistant, their blasters were nearly starship grade levels of firepower, and they rode on war droids that were tanks in their own right. They preferred their strategy simple, devastating, and overwhelmingly offensive, using as much force as can be spared at any given time. The true Mandalorians were quite a bit different from the Neo Crusaders, whose tactics we've discussed in earlier videos, and the way they approached their battles was included in this. Instead of on basilisk war droids, they relied mostly on their jetpacks, and their armor was crammed full of all sorts of useful weapons like flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and darts. They kept as much firepower on their bodies as they could at all times, while still leaving room for maneuverability. This would have been the first influence that Mandalorian commanders would have had over the GAR. For starters, they probably would have had most, if not all their clones equipped with jetpacks, and while it's doubtful that the Kaminoans would have agreed to specialize clone armor as much as the Mandalorians specialized theirs, it's a fair bet that some of their gauntlet weaponry would have been made in it too. This, of course, comes with its own tactical changes in turn. To help you get a better idea of what you're talking about, here's a clip of Pre-Vizsla fighting Darth Maul. In this clip, Pre-Vizsla uses absolutely everything in his arsenal, switching rapidly between weapons and attack styles to disorient Maul, and using his jetpack to constantly maintain distance. This is how Mandalorians approached combat. To them, you either left no holds barred, or you weren't really trying. The Kaminoans taught their clones they were pieces of a whole person, members of a unit that was stronger together. The Mandalorians taught the opposite, that each soldier was a unit in his or herself, and they should all fight like they were the last man standing. The Mandalorians likely would have passed this on to the clones under their command, and it would have changed the Republic ground tactics greatly. There would be no more clones just running up and punching droids, no more charging in waves. Every clone, every soldier in the Grand Army would be opening up their enemies with everything they had, whizzing around on jetpacks to avoid return fire while they plugged their enemies full of blaster bolts. It should also be said that unless they had no other choice, Mandalorians didn't believe in just holding the line either. They were always on the offensive, and their tactics of unrelenting pressure at all times were a big part of what made them so effective. This might actually have been a good match for the droid army, which liked to do more or less the same thing, but less effectively. Under Mandalorians, the clone army would have been a white wave, sweeping away any opposition no matter what the cost in lives was. That's the other thing about the Mandalorians. They were brutal, much more so than even the nastiest of Jedi. Any casualties were acceptable if they brought about victory. This sort of mentality was something the Republic gradually began to adopt later in the war, shortly before they started to win, and with the Mandalorians, it would have been adopted right away. There would be no Jedi mercy in the Grand Army of the Republic. Everything was kill or be killed on Mandalore, and so it would be across the galaxy. So how would this have played out on a galactic scale? Essentially, the Grand Army of the Republic would have been a lot more aggressive right off the bat. In the main timeline, the Republic spent the first 2 months of the war mobilizing and carrying out surgical strikes and minor, specialized campaigns. The Mandalorians would never have tolerated that. They would have gone all out in the offensive, and they would have done so immediately. The clones that were deployed by that point would have been split up among the major trade routes and sent barreling down toward the borders of separatist space. This might sound a bit foolhardy, but it actually wouldn't be. As the Essential Guide to Warfare and the Essential Guide to Atlas both point out, if the Republic had done something like this, the Confederacy would have been crushed before they were able to recover from Geonosis. Like the Republic, they had to consolidate and mobilize during those first 2 months, and if the Republic pounced that early, they wouldn't have stood a chance. Key planets would have been taken before they were able to get back on their feet, and the Mandalorians wouldn't stop there. They'd keep throwing army after army of the Confederacy until it dropped dead. That, of course, is probably why Darth Sidious didn't consider having Mandalorians command the GAR. But that's just a theory, a Star Wars theory. And as per usual guys, I want to know your thoughts. Do you think the Mandalorians would have made better commanders than the Jedi? I personally think they would have, but I know it is kind of subjective, hence why I want to know your guys' opinions in the comments section below. And you guys have heard this spiel all before, but make sure you check out all those links in the description that are just waiting to be clicked by eager Star Wars fans such as yourself. We have our Geetsly's gaming network where you can join us on Roblox and Gmod. We have various Discord servers where you can interact with Star Wars fans. And for all you history buffs out there, I also have a second history channel where I discuss all the niche and unknown topics of World War II for your viewing pleasure. So make sure you check all those out guys. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.